Rosh Ibrahim with the Osgood Center for International Studies. In the book launch, Bruce Rydell was talking about his new book, Deadly Embrace, and he alluded to some of the same concerns you had with drone strikes. And he offered an alternative. He said after talking to many senior officials in both Pakistan and Afghanistan that actually bolster in helicopters would actually help. And I wanted to know if you actually knew what he was talking about. He didn't really go into detail.
What in helicopters?
Helicopters. He said he asked some senior officials in Pakistan the thing that they needed the most in resources. And
airlift capabilities. Yeah. I mean, if you're looking to boost, I mean, maybe he was talking about boosting Pakistani capability or no?
No. He was also talking about the sanctuaries. He was actually talking about patrolling. He said that there was
air weapon systems,
weapon systems, and also just patrolling. You said I forgot what the Taliban leader. He was posting several video recordings and airwave broadcasts a day, and with more patrolling over some province in Pakistan, he was only sending about once every 3 weeks, and that kept on diminishing. So he said helicopters would help.
Well, well, Bruce Rydell has looked at this problem set for a much longer time than I have. He was, a senior analyst when I was a rifle platoon leader, so I defer to his knowledge on this. My co-author and my co-conspirator, Dave Barno, is in Pakistan right now, so I'll be interested to see if they tell him something similar.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, I was asking because he didn't allude to like what the helicopter
What?
do, and I didn't know if it was mainly armed.
For jamming or for for kinetic strikes, I don't either.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Another question. You had a question?
That's fifth consecutive. I don't know.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Delinda Hanley from the Washington Report on Middle East Affairs magazine. And I was struck when you said that Americans aren't paying much attention to this. They aren't debating it too much. They're more interested in the economy. How much is this war costing, and what is the Defense Department budget, and doesn't this affect our economy pretty drastically?
I mean, yes and no. Compared to healthcare costs, no. Compared to Medicaid, Social Security, Medicare, not really. It costs about $1 million. Is it expensive? Absolutely. It costs about $1 million, I think, to keep one soldier on the ground in Afghanistan. If we have 100,000 soldiers on the ground in Afghanistan, you can get a rough sketch of how much that costs, bearing in mind that there's a delta there. That then, how much does it cost to keep this soldier on the ground in Wichita, or in Fort Riley, Kansas, or Fort Benning, Georgia, rather than on the ground in Uruzgan province. I do know that gas that costs around $400 a gallon in Uruzgan province, once you factor in all the costs associated with bringing in petroleum, costs a lot less at Fort Benning, Georgia. But as far as I think that the tough bit about your question is that you do have to factor in that delta. How much do operations in Afghanistan cost vice keeping soldiers on the ground in America? And then that falls into a bigger question about how big a military do we want? How many ground forces do you want? I think my sense is that when the U.S. Army begins to draw down in Afghanistan, we're going to start having a question about why we have so many ground forces. Maybe we buy more airframes and naval platforms to prepare for, to deter the great Chinese menace or something. I don't know. But I think that falls into larger questions about, how much do you think it's appropriate to spend on the defense budget each year? There are, plenty who would say that if you're spending less than 4%, then that's fine. Less 4% of your GDP, then that's fine. That's perfectly acceptable. Others would say that is absolute madness, given our presence in the world, given our nearest competitors, and as far as military rivals. But those are larger questions that thankfully the electorate and our elected policymakers get to answer, and not me. So.
Question?
A comment first related to that question of the cost of keeping soldiers in the field. As I understand it, the GNP of Afghanistan is about $20 billion a year.
You're going to ask the ANSF question, aren't you?
What is that?
Exactly.
Ask it and answer it. And also, my real question is, what are our long-term security interests in Afghanistan?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Well, let me again. we do three things. Ask the question that I interrupted you from asking. Second, address your second question, and then go back to answering the first. Apologies, stay with me. First, I think the question you're about to ask is, given the size of the Afghan economy, the amount that we can reasonably expect in terms of revenues for the Afghan state, how we can build up Afghan national security force that's going to be so large that they're going to be able to pay for it? No. Okay, sorry.
We're spending 5 times as much as the GNP of Afghanistan
every
year on the military effort.
Got it.
Bizarre.
Yeah, okay. Well, then it does make sense to start with your second question, which had to do with interests. We're not spending all that money in Afghanistan because for Afghan interests, but for U.S. interests. I think in terms of what our interests are, as far as the United States has lots of interests in Afghanistan, very few vital interests. And I define vital, I distinguish between the two in terms of vital interests being things that it continues to make sense for the United States to expend blood and treasure on. As far as our vital interests, one, ensuring that al-Qaeda does not have sanctuaries in Afghanistan and Pakistan from which it can attack the United States. Two, being that Pakistan is not destabilized by al-Qaeda and other transnational actors. Those are the two interests as far as why we are in Afghanistan. And against that context, how big the GDP of Afghanistan or even Pakistan is don't really matter. Although then you do get against maybe other economic interests the United States has. For example, if we do things vis-a-vis Afghanistan and Pakistan that endanger our long-term interests with India, our long-term economic interests and political interests with India, maybe that's not worth it. And again, those are questions that I'm glad I don't have to answer because I'm just a lowly analyst and not a
we're
president.
Not interested in building that pipeline across Afghanistan anymore.
That may be a interest, but it's certainly not the reason we have 100,000 troops there. I mean, if oil was a reason why we have troops on the ground, Iraq didn't turn out too well for us. We kept hundreds of thousands of troops cycling in and out of Iraq over a 6-7 year period, and we didn't get anything from the stakes from Iraq's oil stakes.
Thank you.
Doesn't mean that was our plan.
Let's take one last question. We're running out of time.
It's kind of a follow-up. A lot of people say that Al-Qaeda is a vital interest, but the CIA says Al-Qaeda isn't really in Afghanistan, and it's not really clear how our presence is affecting their operational capability.
Yeah.
It's not even clear that they'd want to go back to Afghanistan, seeing as they're, hanging out in Pakistan and seem to be doing all right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your first comment after the bit about the CIA's analysis of Al-Qaeda was it's not clear what effect our presence in Afghanistan is having on Al-Qaeda's decision to be in Pakistan vis-a-vis Afghanistan. I think you've got to answer that question before you can then answer, whether or not our presence in Afghanistan is worth it, right? Because it's not as if the two are unrelated. They're not in Pakistan. It's not like we went to Afghanistan and Al-Qaeda was in Pakistan. They're in Pakistan because we're in Afghanistan. Now, whether or not we can stay in Afghanistan in much smaller troop level or with a much smaller footprint, or whether or not we can conduct operations in Afghanistan in a much more limited way, those are legitimate questions to have. But I think that you do have to figure out that question that you identified, which is it's not really clear what effect our presence is having on Al-Qaeda, and until you can answer that question, then I think you have to table all the others.
Really
I'll allow you a follow-up.
It's not really clear why. I mean, can you explain why Al-Qaeda would move back to Afghanistan? And what effect that would have on their operational capability?
If we were to move out, it depends on what Afghanistan looks like. I mean, I think it's a good question, but it depends on what exactly Afghanistan looks like. If Afghanistan is under the Taliban, if it's a lawless region, I mean, we've seen areas, we have precedent to where transnational terror groups go to where the vacuums are in authority. So if Afghanistan's a vacuum of authority, then Al-Qaeda might very well move back there, because then it makes sense. The incentives are on the Pakistanis to push them out, and they don't have as many incentives not to go back to Afghanistan. Again, this is my 7th time I've answered this. I simply don't know what their incentive structures are. So I don't know how you set up the positive and negative incentives to either keep them where they are or to push them back. But it's the president's stated policy to not have Al-Qaeda and transnational or Al-Qaeda sanctuaries in Afghanistan or Pakistan, and that's where that's the answer the president has arrived at least. So.
Certainly, there are a lot of questions and concerns about the future. I'm sure we'll be having you back here again to talk about Afghanistan in a year or two. Thank you all so much.
Yeah.
And thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.